From Akainu's destructive flames to Sengoku's tactical brilliance, the Marines in One Piece have no shortage of powerful members. But what if we could take the best abilities of all of them and create one unbeatable Marine? In today's video, I'm building the strongest Marine in One Piece history by pulling the single most broken trait from every legitimate Marine who ever wore the coat. This Marine would be the world government's own answer to every Yonko, every warlord, and every monster the Grand Line has ever produced, built entirely out of people who already swore an oath to hunt those monsters down. Before we start assembling this Marine, we need some ground rules. Every trait has to come from an actual Marine, but these could be both current and retired officers. We're also cutting non-canon names like Zephyr, and anyone who worked for the world government without ever actually enlisting in the Marines, like Vegapunk. Additionally, one Marine can only lend us one trait, so I can't pull multiple traits from characters like Garp just because they happen to be overqualified for everything on this list. I think that's enough with the rules, so let's start with the skill that determines if our Marine can really reach the top of the hierarchy: leadership. Every legendary force still needs somebody at the very top, giving the orders, and we have some incredible fleet admirals like Sengoku and Sakazuki to pick from. But I want to save those two for other traits, and the perfect pick exists one step above them anyway. For leadership, I'm picking Kong, who served as fleet admiral back during the Roger era and navigated the Marines through the God Valley incident. By the time the story catches up to him, he's been promoted to commander-in-chief of the entire world government's military, a position that sits above the fleet admiral himself and answers to almost nobody outside the Gorosei. That means our Marine isn't just capable of commanding a branch, he can oversee the entire military, along with every allied unit like CP0. We've genuinely never seen Kong throw a punch on page, so this isn't a power scaling pick, it's purely based on the authority he holds over the Marines right now. Even during the Reverie, when kings and queens from every corner of the world gather under Marine protection, it was Kong's chain of command holding the entire operation together behind the scenes. But a chain of command built entirely on fear collapses the second someone stronger shows up, so the next trait has to give people an actual reason to follow our Marine. This trait is Advanced Conqueror's Haki, and the only Marine who's ever shown it working at true large-scale power is Monkey D. Garp. Conqueror's Haki grows stronger in people with an overwhelming will to dominate, and very few Marines have as much willpower as Garp when he's trying to protect his subordinates. His Galaxy Impact fused with Conqueror's Haki with Advanced Armament Haki to produce a contactless shockwave that tore through a massive section of Hachinosu, without him laying a single hand on anything in the process. That ability to channel Conqueror's Haki directly into a devastating large-scale attack is super important for our Marine, because he'll be going up against opponents like Shanks, whose abilities go beyond just knocking weaker-willed people unconscious. The other Marine Admiral, who definitely possesses Conqueror's Haki of his own, is Sengoku, but he's never shown anything close to Garp's level of weaponized application. Garp also famously turned down the Fleet Admiral position multiple times over his career, which only reinforces that his true strength was never about rank. It was always about raw, overwhelming will. But being capable of leading and enforcing your will on foot soldiers isn't everything. Our Marine also needs to earn their respect by having great principles, and for that trait, we've picked a Marine most casual fans have never even heard of: Captain T-Bone. T-Bone isn't strong in the conventional sense, as he lost to Zoro in the Water 7 arc, but he's one of the only Marines who cares about his men as people rather than resources. During his clash with a pirate wielding a massive cannon arm weapon, he visibly agonized over the injuries his subordinates suffered around him. Instead of hiding behind his troops, T-Bone willingly stepped in front of enemies to buy his crew room to retreat. T-Bone was so respected among the Marines that he eventually reached the rank of Vice Admiral before the Cross Guild placed a bounty on his head and had him killed. Characters like Kobe and Fujitora both have bigger resumes and better backstories, but neither of them embodies rank-and-file decency quite as cleanly as T-Bone does. T-Bone's motto was do 100 good deeds every day, and because he disliked unnecessary violence so much and wished to protect life, he was also a vegan. A good heart still needs a mind that doesn't break the second something impossible happens right in front of it. The trait I'm looking for here is willpower, and once again you'd think of big names like Akainu and Aokiji who fought for 10 days straight on Punk Hazard to determine who would be the next fleet admiral. But we're still pretty early in the process of making this Marine, and I could use these two for other traits. So for the trait of willpower, I'm taking one of the single best displays of on-the-spot composure in the entire series: Vice Admiral Momonga. When Boa Hancock's Devil Fruit ability turned an entire fleet of Marines to stone during the Summit War Saga's opening stages, Momonga didn't freeze and panic like everyone around him. He immediately identified that pain could override the attraction effect and drove a blade straight through his own hand without a second of hesitation. Momonga stayed fully operational while every soldier around him was literally turned into statues, and still had the guts to stay on Amazon Lily for 2 days. Momonga fought off Sea Kings until Boa Hancock changed her mind about supporting the Marines, demonstrating the kind of toughness that no other Vice Admiral had shown until that that point in the series. Some Marines like Kobe have their own claims to composure under pressure, but none of them had to outthink an instant reality warping mind trick in real time with zero warning. Build that kind of resistance into our Marine and there's no fear effect, no hypnosis, and no despair-inducing haki that gets to control him for even 1 second. Now it's time to give this Marine an actual body to back up all that ambition. Once again, the obvious answer here would be Garp, as he's already strengthened his body to the absolute limits that regular humans can achieve. But we've already used Garp for Conqueror's Haki, so for this trait, I want to pick one of the most underrated characters for physical strength. And that's the woman who casually put a dent in a Mark III pacifista during her first real appearance, Vice Admiral Dahl. Dahl's flying kicks are strong enough to visibly stagger a pacifista unit built specifically to survive attacks from powerful humans and Devil Fruit users alike. She backs that up with close-range strikes reinforced by advanced armament emission, letting her hit targets without even making direct contact with them. Dahl is also a master of a unique fighting style she calls Soul of Rock, which allowed her to even take on a giant barehanded. Other characters have better strength and durability feats than Dahl, but a huge portion of that comes from haki output rather than raw muscle, which makes Dahl the cleaner pick for pure unarmed physical force in this build. But all of that offense means nothing if a single lucky hit takes our Marine off the board early. So our next pick is Armament Haki with a focus on defense. Now, the entire admiralty of the Marines is great at using Armament Haki, but how often have you seen them actually defending instead of treating offense as the best defense? Keeping that in mind, my pick for Armament Haki is based on the single best defensive Haki application the series has shown us, courtesy of Sentomaru. Sentomaru is Vegapunk's personal bodyguard, and is said to have the world's greatest defense. He backs up this title by demonstrating advanced Armament Haki emissions before the technique was ever formally explained to the audience. When Sentomaru fought Luffy, his attacks didn't need to actually land. They struck Luffy hard enough to send him flying without ever making physical contact. The defensive application of this is that Sentomaru's Armament Haki can stop attacks that come from outside his reach. This is particularly useful when Sentomaru goes up against opponents like Kizaru, who outclass him in speed, because he can block attacks even if he doesn't see them coming. Now, powerful individuals like Rob Lucci in his awakened form can pierce Sentomaru's defenses, but I have another trait lined up that gives our character the physical toughness to tank an attack like that and still stay in the fight. Sentomaru has a level of haki control that most Marines never come close to even after decades of service, and together with the attacking options we have so far, our Marine is going to be an absolute menace on the battlefield. Strength and defense only get you so far without a mind managing the bigger picture behind the scenes, so we need a pick for strategic intelligence. This one is actually pretty easy because we have an unparalleled Marine Vice Admiral with the title of Great Staff Officer Tsuru. Tsuru's entire reputation is built on planning, intelligence work, and reading dangerous people before they ever become a battlefield problem. Part of Tsuru's tactical brilliance comes from her experience, as she's been in the Marines long enough to have trained both Garp and Sengoku back in their academy days. Even Doflamingo, a man who treats most Marine authority as background noise, took Tsuru seriously enough to acknowledge her as a genuine threat. When Trafalgar Law was captured by the Marines, Doflamingo wanted to break him free in order to use Law's Devil Fruit abilities to immortalize himself. However, after seeing Tsuru's ship stationed off Minion Island, Doflamingo changed his mind and sailed away, which says everything you need to know about how much weight her judgment carries. Many characters show flashes of strategic thinking on their own, but neither of them are defined by it the way Tsuru is. What makes Tsuru even more effective is her willingness to bend the rules when the situation calls for it. When she spoke to Doflamingo in Impel Down, Tsuru was technically bypassing Marine procedure, but she recognized that his insight into the battle for the title of Pirate King mattered more than the letter of the law. Give our Marine Tsuru's mind, and he's not just reacting to threats as they show up. He's already 3 moves ahead of the organizations that create them. Planning ahead is one thing, but somebody still has to make the split-second calls once chaos actually breaks out on the ground. Now, all of the Marine admirals have great battle IQ feats, but there's one man who successfully commanded the largest organized battle the Marines have ever fought, Sengoku. At the Battle of Marineford, Sengoku was managing a full-blown disaster unfolding on multiple fronts at once. He correctly anticipated Whitebeard's rescue strategy and coordinated the defensive formations around the execution platform. Think about it. Sengoku had to account for the alliance between Whitebeard's core divisions and the 41 independent New World pirate crews, and he perfectly integrated the strengths of his subordinates into his final plan. Even when Luffy, an entire wave of escaped Impel Down prisoners, and Blackbeard's ambush all collided within minutes of each other, Sengoku managed to contain the situation. That's battlefield command under the worst possible conditions imaginable, and he never lost control of the overall situation, even as it spiraled further out of hand by the minute. Sengoku did all of this without needing to lean on his own Buddha transformation to hold things together, meaning that our Marine can win battles through tactical brilliance alone. Tactics grow even stronger when you have foresight, so for the next trait, I'm choosing observation haki. This is where I would have really liked to take traits from pirates because none of the Marines we've seen so far are confirmed to have future sight observation haki. In terms of developing observation haki to an advanced level, there's one character who's pushed this skill to its absolute limit out of necessity, and that's Fujitora. Fujitora is a Marine admiral despite being completely blind, and that's because he's proficient enough in observation haki to sense people, incoming attacks, and even raw emotion across an entire battlefield. Being able to defeat enemies without even seeing them is incredible given the context of the One Piece universe, and it's all because of Fujitora's precision. His senses are so sharp that he can accurately direct gravity and drop meteors onto distant specific targets during the chaos of Dressrosa without needing his eyes for a single part of the process. The future sight demonstrated by Shanks and Katakuri is impressive in its own right, but neither of them operate at the battlefield-wide level Fujitora demonstrates fight after fight. Build that haki into our Marine and he becomes nearly impossible to ambush or overwhelm, no matter how many enemies try to close in on him at once. Okay, so we've got all three types of haki sorted, but our Marine is still missing one physical trait, and that's speed. For pure movement, there's genuinely no competition among the Marines, with the top spot going to Admiral Kizaru. Now, I know what you're thinking. Kizaru's ability to travel at the speed of light is a consequence of his Devil Fruit, the Pika Pika no Mi. But what about when he's not in his Logia form? Kizaru can still deliver lightning-fast kicks and dodge conventional attacks without relying on his Devil Fruit. Additionally, moving at the speed he does means that Kizaru has incredibly fast reflexes and quick thinking abilities, even though he acts like the laziest man in the entire Marine ranks. The only reason Kizaru isn't ranked even higher in the Marine Corps is his lack of ambition. But now we get all the advantages of his skills with none of the drawbacks. Our Marine's actual Devil Fruit slot is going to someone else on this list, but you won't see that until we get to the end of the video. The reason I'm pushing the Devil Fruit back is because our Marine needs to be able to handle himself even without supernatural abilities. So the next trait I need to pick is weapons proficiency, and here we have a bunch of great options. Fujitora is easily the strongest swordsman in the Marines, but we've already used him for observation haki, and he's much better with meteors than swords anyway. Gion and Momonga come to mind as well, but these two are specialists in their respective styles, which means their skill set isn't as broad as I'd like. That's why I'm picking Tashigi, because in addition to her proficiency with the gentle blade style and Soru, this Marine captain also possesses an encyclopedic knowledge of swords and bladed weapons. She can identify Meito on sight, understand their individual grades, and accurately judge the quality and hidden characteristics of weapons she's never even held before in her life. Gion and Momonga may both be stronger fighters, but Tashigi has more impressive feats of swordsmanship like deflecting cannonballs through pure technique. Now that our Marine actually knows how to judge a weapon, let's give him one worth carrying into a fight. Given that he'll be fighting pirates, warlords, and God knows what else, there's nothing more purpose-built for this job than Smoker's Nanashaku Jite. Smoker's weapon is a regular Jite by design, but it has a sea stone tip that can weaken Devil Fruit users on direct contact. A Devil Fruit ability is the single biggest power advantage most opponents in this series rely on to survive a fight with a Marine at all, so you can understand the usefulness of having a weapon containing sea stone. Smoker combines that with his own smoke propulsion to close distances fast, launching himself towards targets while keeping the sea stone tip angled away from his body the entire time. Most of the other Marines only ever use swords or sabers as their weapons, so Smoker's Jite actually gives us a bit of an edge with the element of surprise as well. Hand the Nanashaku Jite to our Marine and he's got a built-in counter to the exact type of enemy that gives every other Marine on this list the most trouble, and he can make the arrest without needing to kill anyone to do it. Not every job our Marine takes needs to end in a headline-making brawl. Sometimes Marines need to operate stealthily and stay deep undercover as they infiltrate pirate organizations. For the missions that need to stay quiet, there's only one real candidate, Don Quixote Rocinante. Rocinante spent years operating undercover directly inside the Don Quixote family. Just imagine that, a Marine commander playing the role of a pirate so convincingly that almost nobody around him ever suspected the truth. Granted, his Nagi Nagi no Mi could erase all sound from a designated area, letting conversations happen without anyone outside that zone hearing a single thing, but Rocinante still needs to cultivate a very specific skill set. No one else in the series has built an entire double life around staying hidden in plain sight the way Rocinante did for years on end. And the only reason Rocinante eventually got caught was because he tried to help Trafalgar Law recover from the deadly Amber Lead syndrome by feeding him the Ope Ope no Mi. Accidents like that are 1 in a million, and giving our Marine Rocinante stealth means that he can infiltrate virtually any pirate crew he needs to. Now for the trait that ties this entire build together and gives it real finishing power, our Marine's Devil Fruit. We have a ton of great options among the Admiralty, but unfortunately, I have to leave out a few top picks. Sengoku's Hito Hito no Mi Model Daibutsu is one of the most powerful Devil Fruits we've seen in the series so far, but we've already used him for tactics. We have the same issue with Kizaru and Fujitora, since they were used for speed and observation haki respectively. So this pick comes down to a choice between Akainu, Aramaki, and Aokiji. But when pure lethality is the goal, there's only one good choice, and that's Fleet Admiral Sakazuki's Magu Magu no Mi. Aramaki's Mori Mori no Mi definitely offers more versatility and better mobility, but it doesn't have the power to close out a fight the way Molten Magma does. Sakazuki Haki's abilities produce attacks on a genuinely volcanic scale, burning straight through conventional defenses that would stop almost anything else on this list. The best example we have for this is Ace's death, as Akainu damaged him based on the fact that his magma was more powerful than Ace's pure flames. During his 10-day fight with Aokiji over who would become Fleet Admiral, Akainu permanently altered the landscape of an entire island, turning Punk Hazard into the half-frozen, half-scorched wasteland it is today. Since speed and sensory ability are already covered by separate traits earlier in this build, the Devil Fruit slot is for ending the fight as quickly and decisively as physically possible. Our Marine is turning out to be an absolute powerhouse, but to maximize the effects of Akainu's firepower, he needs perfect aim. The trait I'm looking for here is precision, and within the Marine Corps, the only smart choice we have is Hibari. Hibari is the only Marine in the entire series clearly established as a dedicated sniper, using Vegapunk's GP flower technology to turn nearby gunpowder into harmless flowers. Hibari is capable of jamming enemy firearms with long-range shots, which don't even hurt the people holding them in the process. Technically, most admirals and vice admirals can hit targets from further away with brute force, but none of them actually bring sniper discipline to the table. It's the patience, concealment, target prioritization, and ammunition control that separates a marksman from someone who just happens to have a long-range attack. Give our Marine Hibari's expertise as a sniper, and he's got a reliable way to disable a threat from a distance long before it gets close enough to become a real problem. Every trait we've picked so far is a fixed value, but the Marine we're building needs to keep improving long after this video ends. That's why I saved the best trait for last: growth potential. Many of the characters we met in the East Blue have grown into commendable officers by now, but none of them have progressed as far as Kobe. Kobe started the series as a cabin boy who couldn't throw a punch, and flinched at the sight of blood. But after joining the Marines and training under Garp, Kobe transformed into an absolute powerhouse, capable of splitting Pizarro's massive stone hand clean in half with his honesty impact. Unlike most cases, Kobe's massive improvement didn't come from a lucky devil fruit. It came from relentless, obsessive training under Garp, including secretly running Garp's brutal battleship bag exercises on his own time. Helmeppo and Tashigi have both grown meaningfully over the course of the story too, but Kobe went above and beyond what his superiors required of him. No one else in One Piece, Marines and pirates alike, have demonstrated the sheer raw self-improvement that Kobe did, and we know that he's only going to grow even further. Our Marine is already a monster, but give him Kobe's potential and he doesn't plateau. Every other ability on this list keeps compounding indefinitely, because the work ethic underneath all of it never actually stops pushing him forward. By the time the final saga comes around, our Marine might actually be strong enough to stop the King of Pirates, whoever that may be. No pirate crew, no Yonko, and no Warlord Alliance was ever built to survive something like this, because nothing in the New World has ever had to fight the entire Marine organization, distilled into a single man. Is there a Marine you think is slept on? Is there a trait you'd swap out entirely from someone I didn't mention? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you in the next one.